My name is Cynthia. The driveway was covered in frost when I pulled up. I expected to find the porch light on, maybe a wreath, or perhaps the soft sound of music drifting from the front window. Instead, the house looked abandoned. No light, no warmth, just the echo of silence pressing against the glass. I sat in the car for a few seconds, watching the dark windows, thinking maybe I'd gotten the date wrong. But no, it was Christmas Eve. I was supposed to be home. I grabbed my bag, went up the steps, and found the spare key exactly where it always was, under that cracked ceramic frog my dad swore was too ugly to be stolen. I let myself in, expecting to hear voices, smell cookies baking, but there was none of that. The kitchen light was on, yellowish and dim, and at the table, hunched over a sandwich as if he'd crumble if he chewed too hard, was Grandpa Jimmy. He looked up when he heard me, his gaze tired but kind. "You're here," he said, as if I was late for something. "Where is everyone?" I asked, dropping my bag by the door. He gestured towards the fridge. "They left you a note." I walked over, a knot already forming in my stomach. Taped to the door was a torn piece of notebook paper. My mom's handwriting, slanted, rushed, in all caps. "We used your money to invest in stocks. We'll explain later. Take care of Grandpa." For a few seconds, I didn't move, just stared. I read it again. And again. Each time the words hit me harder. $32,000. Gone. The money I'd spent 4 years saving. Double shifts, canceled weekends, ignored dinners out. All evaporated with a single sentence taped to the fridge door. I sat across from Grandpa, still holding the note in my hand, as if it were proof of a crime. "They went to the Maldives," he said softly. "They left yesterday morning." I couldn't even speak. "I thought maybe you had sent them something," he added, and then I realized the envelope was gone. I shook my head. "No, I didn't send anything." I opened the fridge. Half a loaf of bread, condiments, a bottle of tonic water. No milk, no leftovers. The sink was full of dirty dishes, and a final notice from the electric company sat untouched next to the toaster. "Have you eaten anything else besides that?" I asked, pointing to the sandwich. His eyes darted to the floor. "Haven't gotten much else this week." My chest burned, but I stayed silent. I didn't cry. Not yet. I tossed the note onto the counter and turned to him. "All right," I said. "First, we're getting you a decent meal. Then, I'm going to find out exactly how deep this goes." And as I picked up my phone, I knew one thing. This wasn't just about money anymore. I made Grandpa Jimmy oatmeal with apples and honey, the way he used to make it for me when I was little. He ate slowly, but finished the whole bowl, thanking me as if I'd brought him a steak dinner. I cleared the table and started the dishwasher, pretending my hands weren't shaking. I didn't want to think about the money yet. Not while he was still hungry. But when I sat down with my laptop and logged into my online bank account, the truth I'd been trying to avoid stared back at me in numbers. Final transfer, 3 days ago. Destination, a brokerage account I didn't recognize, listed with my parents' names. Balance, 0. $32,000. Gone. I closed the laptop and leaned back, looking at the ceiling, as if maybe I'd find the answer there. But all I found were memories. I started saving when I was 16. My dad had just lost his accounting office job, and my mom's part-time clerk work barely covered groceries. I applied for a diner job and then picked up a second shift at the laundromat on weekends. While my friends went to football games and danced under paper streamers at prom, I cleaned lint filters and counted tips in the break room. Not because anyone made me, but because I didn't want us to drown. I remember the day I opened my first savings account. I handed my mom the folder with the account number, proud and exhausted after my 6th consecutive weekend of double shifts. She smiled and said, "Banks take advantage of young people. Just transfer it to our family account. I'll keep it safe until you need it." I nodded. I believed her. Every month I sent 500, then 600, then 800. When I picked up more hospital shifts, I gave up vacations. I drove a car that sputtered every time I turned left. I lived on rice, beans, and pride, and every time I doubted myself, I'd think, this is how people get free. Slow, quiet, on their own terms. Aurora never had to think like that. She was 6 years younger and somehow lived in a different version of our home. When I turned 16, I got a secondhand backpack and a pile of bills. When she turned 16, she got a new phone and an ice cream cake with her name in calligraphy. She never had to get a job, never asked the price of anything, never offered to help when I was working through flu season and final exams. She's more sensitive, my mom always said. We don't want to overwhelm her. I used to tell myself it didn't matter, that I was the strong one, that some people carried more because they could. But now, sitting in a house with no Christmas lights, no family, and no money, I wondered if I was carrying things that were never mine. I looked at Grandpa asleep in his chair, and then at the envelope I'd sealed with our bank statements inside. I opened my laptop again, not to check the damage, but to start tracking it. Every withdrawal, every date, every lie. Because if they thought they could take everything and still call it love, they were about to learn how much I still had. I woke to the sound of Grandpa coughing in the next room. It was a dry, shallow cough, like his lungs were trying to expel dust. I wrapped myself in a blanket and followed him to the hallway. He was already in the kitchen when I got there, leaning heavily on the counter as he filled a glass of water. His hands were shaking so badly the glass almost slipped. I gently took it from him, helped him to the table, and tried to keep my face neutral. "Did you take your morning medication?" I asked. He looked at me as if I'd reminded him of something he was trying not to think about. "Ran out 2 days ago," he admitted. I asked Aurora to pick them up, but she said she was busy. I opened the kitchen cabinet where we always kept his pill organizer. Empty. I checked the drawers. Nothing. The pharmacy refill notice was untouched under a pile of grocery flyers. His name printed neatly on the label. The pickup date circled in fluorescent pink, 5 days ago. My stomach clenched. While Grandpa drank his water, I walked around the house making mental notes. The sink was full of plates with dried food remnants. The fridge held 3 expired ketchup packets, a reheated lasagna, and practically rotten carrots. The bread on the counter had a patch of mold, and the fruit bowl contained a single shriveled orange. I found unopened utility bills piled near the front door. One envelope was red and stamped, "Final warning." Aurora had been here. Her jacket was still on the coat rack, her makeup bag on the bathroom counter. But the care was absent. I checked the guest room where she sometimes stayed when she was taking care of Grandpa. The bed was made, but there were snack wrappers on the floor and an empty wine bottle under the nightstand. I sat back down with Grandpa, opened my laptop, and went through the past 6 months of bank activity. The pattern was subtle, always just a few hundred, sometimes less. Grocery purchases that never resulted in groceries. Family emergencies labeled in the transfer notes. Then, more recently, larger withdrawals. One marked investment opportunity. Another for flight confirmation. I didn't recognize half of them, but the dates fit perfectly. They were taking the money slowly at first, then faster, then all at once. "I'm sorry, Cynthia," Grandpa said softly. I should have said something, but I didn't know how. I turned to him. "You knew they were taking your money?" His eyes filled with tears. "Not at first. Last year, when the kitchen renovation started, they told me it was just a loan. They said they'd pay me back monthly. But there was always some reason. Daniel's tuition, Aurora's car. And after a while, I stopped asking. I felt the ache settle behind my ribs, sharp and familiar. They hadn't just betrayed me. They used him too. I reached across the table and took his hand in mine. "Then we stop asking," I said. "And we start protecting what's left." He nodded once, slowly and deliberately, as I opened the manila envelope and spread the first page of records on the kitchen table. I didn't call them. Not when I saw the brokerage transfer, not when I realized Grandpa's medication was 5 days late. Not when I found the overdraft notice tucked under a discount coupon on the counter. There was no point. They knew exactly what they did. They were counting on me to accept it, to sigh and clean up the mess as I always had. Instead, I opened a new folder on my computer and called it Damage Control. Every receipt, bank transaction, and transfer was logged. I took photos of the fridge, the moldy bread, the final notices. I scanned Grandpa's pharmacy alerts, the utility bills, and the prescription pickup slip still attached to the bag Aurora never opened. I pulled screenshots of text messages from my mom, phrases like, "We're all in this together, and you're so responsible." It's inspiring, and added them to the pile. When I was done, I emailed Marina. She replied within an hour. She always had a sixth sense for when I wasn't okay. In college, she was the only one who noticed when I dropped 5 pounds during finals or when I skipped dinner 3 nights in a row. Now she was a corporate lawyer in San Francisco, but she still replied to my messages like we were roommates in our tiny off-campus apartment, eating microwave burritos and dissecting legal dramas. I told her everything. She didn't waste time with sympathy. "You need to get power of attorney for your grandfather immediately." She sent me the forms. I printed them at the library down the street and brought them home in a plastic folder. Grandpa read every line carefully. He didn't ask questions. He just looked at me, nodded once, and signed. "I should have done this a year ago," he said, pressing his palm over mine. "We notarized it at the pharmacy that afternoon." I asked the tech if they had the rest of Grandpa's medication ready. They didn't. The insurance hadn't cleared the refill. Apparently, someone had tried to pick them up with the wrong ID. I didn't ask who. That night, after Grandpa went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a list. Cancel joint access. Open new accounts. Document every loss. Cut off communication, at least until we had the advantage. When I opened Instagram, they were tagged in a photo. My mom in a floral dress, cocktail in hand. My dad in sunglasses and a hotel towel around his neck. Sunset boat ride with my love. Well deserved. Paradise. The comment section was full of hearts and envy. People saying how cute they were, how happy they looked. I didn't comment. I didn't message. I just took a screenshot and filed it under vacation funded by theft. The next morning, I had closed the account that once held my student loan savings. I redirected Grandpa's Social Security checks to a new bank. I locked down the mailbox and set a password on all utility and medical portals. When the pharmacist called again, I confirmed my identity and told them to reject anyone else who tried to access Grandpa's file. I didn't yell. I didn't send dramatic messages. I just made it impossible for them to touch anything else. When I hung up the phone, I poured myself a glass of water, looked at the organized stack of folders on the table, and felt something I hadn't felt in days: control. And I knew that when they finally came back, they wouldn't be walking into the same house they left. 3 days later, my dad's name lit up my phone screen. I let it ring until it stopped. He called again and again. I finally answered on the 4th try, not because I wanted to hear what he had to say, but because I wanted to know how desperate he sounded. "Cynthia," he said, breathless. "Thank God. Well, we need to talk." I didn't answer. I just waited. There was static on the other end, then a sharp exhale. The market crashed. We didn't see it coming. Look, it's complicated. We just need to get through this week. We'll fix everything, I promise. The silence stretched between us. I could faintly hear waves crashing in the background, or maybe a fountain. I pictured him calling from a hotel balcony in the Maldives, still in his swimming trunks, sunburned and dazed. "We lost almost everything," he said. The fund. It's zeroed out. I looked at Grandpa's bank folder on the kitchen table. I had just organized every document into labeled folders: medical, housing, legal, savings. Everything sealed, everything protected. I just need to borrow enough to stabilize things, he added. We'll pay it back, of course. It's just temporary. I didn't speak. Cynthia? Are you there? I stood up and walked towards the front window. It was raining. The street outside looked empty, except for the neighbor's trash can, blown over by the wind. You knew that money wasn't yours, I finally said. He stammered. We were investing in our future, yours included. It wasn't selfish. We thought it would help everyone. You thought I wouldn't notice, I corrected. There was another pause. Look, we don't have time to argue. I just need you to send something, please. I hung up. That night, after Grandpa went to bed, I printed a notice on my laptop and sealed it in a manila envelope. Then I drove across town and taped it to their front door. Access revoked. Unauthorized withdrawals documented. Reimbursement required. See attached terms. Inside were photocopies of the account statements, the legal power of attorney certificate, and a letter detailing a payment plan. Fixed monthly amounts, 0 annual interest, 0 tolerance for late payments. I knew they wouldn't like it. That was the point. I didn't stay to see if the porch camera caught me. I didn't want the confrontation. I just wanted it on record. They made it about money, so I'd treat it like money. Cold, measurable, enforceable. The next morning, my mom texted me, "What is this about? We need to talk." I didn't reply. They had their chance to talk when they emptied my account. When they left Grandpa without food. When they chose stocks over people. I spent the day scheduling a home visit with Grandpa's new doctor and confirming his spot at the assisted living facility near my apartment. We did the virtual tour together on my phone, and he quietly said, "It looks peaceful," before folding his hands and nodding once. That night, I sat with him in the living room as he told me about meeting Grandma at a diner after her nursing shift. He said she never raised her voice, but she also never backed down. "You remind me of her," he said, his voice hoarser than usual. I smiled, but didn't say anything. I was too focused on what was coming next, because they were coming home in 2 days. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what would happen when they walked through the door. They showed up 2 hours early. My dad's truck pulled into the driveway first, followed by my mom's car. No luggage, no lays, no smiles, just the tension radiating from them like heat. I opened the door before they could knock. My mom walked past me without a word. My dad followed, his jaw clenched. "What the hell is this?" he asked, holding the envelope I'd left on their door as if it were toxic. My mom tossed her purse onto the couch. "You humiliated us. Our neighbors saw that. Couldn't you just wait until we got back?" "I waited years," I said softly. "Don't be a hypocrite," my dad shot back. "We were trying to help you. That money wasn't stolen. It was reallocated. You'll get it back." "No," I said. "I won't. And even if I did, that's not the point." Grandpa shuffled in from the hallway, leaning on his cane. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, watching us like a judge waiting for the noise to die down. "You're being manipulated," my mom told him. "She's filling your head with." "You already took everything," Grandpa said, cutting her off. His voice was soft, but firm. "She's just giving it definition." The room went silent. My mom blinked as if she hadn't heard right. "We did what we had to do for the family. We were under pressure." "You were reckless," I said. "And you made it everyone's problem." My mom's voice broke. "How can you be so cold after everything we've done for you?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she still believed that enabling, manipulating, and emptying our accounts was love. "This isn't revenge," I said. "It's accountability, the kind you never taught us. My dad opened his mouth to argue again, but Grandpa raised his hand. Enough, he said. No one spoke after that. They stood in our living room like guests in a stranger's house, and for the first time, it truly felt like mine. I looked at Grandpa, then at the stack of documents on the table beside me. We were ready. Grandpa moved into his new place 2 weeks later. The staff at Greenhaven already knew his name when we walked in. His room had sunlight, an armchair by the window, and enough space for his crossword collection and the photo of Grandma he still kept by his bedside. I visited every other day, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit and listen. He said he didn't miss the house, just the quiet parts of it. My parents didn't call. Aurora never reached out. I heard the house was put up for sale a month later. Great Bones needs updates, the listing read. I didn't disagree. I started rebuilding my savings. Small transfers this time to an account only I could touch. Some nights I picked up extra shifts. Others, I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by papers, planning a life that finally belonged to me. On my way to work one morning, I drove past the old house. A for sale sign leaned crookedly in the yard. The windows were empty. The porch was still cracked where my dad always said he'd fix it. I didn't slow down, but I smiled. Some houses aren't homes, and some families only teach you what not to be. Thank you for listening to Cynthia's story. If you enjoyed this story, please like and share this video to support us, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories.